Hello and welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to be attempting the most difficult PC build I've ever done. Now I know you're probably looking at the parts and going, what is he on about? My granny can put that PC together in half an hour. But today's PC build, I'm actually going to be trying to do it while blindfolded. Okay, let's get going. Okay, so we're going to make a start on the motherboard, and I'm actually going to do it upside down to give you guys a better view of things. Okay, so the first thing to do is get our socket opened. So there should be a clip over to the side, and we're going to push it down and out all the way to the top. That should then let us open the socket up. Okay, so you'll notice I've got everything laid out on the table to make it a little bit easier. So I just need to find the CPU. I have left it somewhere over to the right hand side. So that feels like our CPU here. So we'll find the corner. There we go. And then we'll get the CPU out of the box. Now on the CPU itself, we do have notches on the top and the bottom. It's not going to be possible for me to tell which way is the top and the bottom, but it should only go into the socket one way. This is either the top or the bottom. If it goes into the socket, it's going to be the top. I've got my board round the right way. There's the socket. I'll try and drop it in. And to me, let's see, that feels like it's going in the right way. There's not any wobble on it, so I think we've gone in the top and bottom the right way round. So all we need to do is close the socket down again. We push the lever down, apply a little bit of pressure here. The black bit of plastic should pop off. If it doesn't pop off, it's no big deal. What we can do is close the lever over. This is much easier when you can see what you're doing. So push that down, close our lever, there's the back bit of plastic popping off. And then we can put the lever down. Okay, next thing to do is RAM.2 SSD. So there's our CPU, and we're going to go for the top slot here. So I just need to find my screwdriver. That's my bigger screwdriver. The smaller one is somewhere around about it. There we go. And one of the hard bits here is probably keeping track of the screws. So I'm going to set them to the left hand side of me. I've got a magnetic screwdriver, so if I lose any screws, I'm hopefully going to be able to search with the screwdriver. And then the other issue is I'm going to want to make sure I put this heatsink back on the same way round. So I'm going to set it over to the side, keeping it the right way round. And then I just need to find my M.2 drive. That feels like it. So this is obviously the screw end, and this is the end that's going to go into this socket. Now, what way around is the socket on this board? So work down from the CPU. That feels like our socket over this way. That's the screw end, so I think I'm going in here. Oh, that felt like it went in. And if we flatten it down, that feels pretty good. Okay, so let's grab the heatsink. And I've removed the plastic protection on the back in a previous build that I put together. So we'll set it into place. What might be easier if I take one of the screws. So there's one of the screws, and I'm going to put it through the heatsink. There's the hole. And then that should help me get it screwed in. So I find the hole on this side. That feels like it's gone through. Just need to get a couple of turns. So that's the screw in on that side. And then find the other screw. And again, we're going to do the same thing through the hole on the heatsink. Flatten the drive down. Just get the wee bit to go through the clip. I think my drive's actually come out. So we're going to have to fit it again. I'm just going to set that to the side. Okay, try and not mess that up again. There's the screw. Okay, that feels like it's gone on. There's my screwdriver. Okay, so that should hopefully be our M.2 SSD installed. So next thing is going to be our RAM. We've got 4 RAM slots in this board, and I've got 2 sticks. So let's see, that feels like the RAM slots there. So I think this board, there's no clips on the bottom, there's clips on the top. So I'm going to open the clip on the second and 4th slot along from the CPU. And then if I locate my RAM, okay, that feels like the 2 sticks. So I'm going to have to work out what way to put the RAM in. I know the socket, the longer side is towards the top of the motherboard. If I feel this RAM kit, I'm just going to have to judge what side is the longest side. Easier said than done, but I think this is the longest side, and quite often there's a sticker on the back of the RAM, so it does feel like there's a sticker there, but it also feels like there's a sticker at the front too. I think I'm just going to have to go with my judgment at which side is the longest, and this side definitely feels like the longest. So we'll try the second slot first of all. Okay, so working towards the top, that one's closed, that one's open. I'm just wondering, would I be better to put the first stick into the first slot and then try the second one? So that feels like I'm in now in the first slot. So that might help me get the second stick in. This definitely feels more like a label here. Hopefully it is. And then we'll try and get the second stick in. So that feels like it's gone in. I'm going to take this one out now at the back. And then I'm going to try and push down on the RAM and hopefully it goes in. If it doesn't, I've obviously got it in the wrong way round. Fingers crossed. Okay, so I am getting some resistance. So either I don't have it quite in the slot. Maybe I don't at this end. Pretty sure I'm in at both sides. If I put a bit of pressure, it's not going in, so I might be in back to front. Let's try it around the other way. Okay, how does that? That feels like we're in at both sides. Let's put a bit of pressure. And that's a nice satisfying noise. So we've got one of our sticks of RAM in. Let's try and get into the 4th slot as well. So obviously my feeling for labels at the back was not very reliable. Okay, so that feels like it's in. A little bit of pressure and it's either going to clip or it's not, and we'll know whether we're around the right way. Okay, so that feels like the RAM has gone in. Okay, so next thing to do is install our CPU cooler. That feels like our thermal paste. We're going to need that as well. And I'm just going to go with the stock Intel cooler. I have used this cooler before, so that's why there's no thermal paste on the back, and we're going to have to add our own. Okay, so I've got my thermal paste. If we remove the top, and I'm going to try and roughly find where I think the center of the CPU is. So this feels like the CPU. And the downside of this is I have no idea how much thermal paste I'm going to be putting on, or whether it's actually in the middle of the CPU. So there has been a bit of resistance. Some thermal paste is bound to have come out by now. I have no idea whether it's too much or too little. Time will tell. I'm going to have to look back at the footage to be able to work out. Hopefully I have put some on. Is there some thermal paste in the CPU, Michelle?
You have to wait till the end to find out.
You need to tell me, because I can't boot it if there's none. It'll fry my CPU. Some's definitely come out.
Some on.
Don't tell me, there's probably loads. Let's see, and then the CPU cooler. So hopefully I've got all these clips set the right way. So let's see, hopefully I don't touch the CPU. I get loads of thermal paste on my hands. Where are the holes? There's a hole there. Yep, I've just lowered the CPU cooler down upside down, and my wife just watched me do it. Okay, so we will clean the CPU cooler and then we will go again.
You told me I wasn't allowed to tell you. That was quite funny.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so it turns out there's nothing actually on the top of the CPU cooler, which was good. So got the cold plate round the right way this time. Locate the holes on the board, and then we'll lower things down. Okay, so that feels like things are roughly in the right place. We'll start off with this corner here. I'm just going to lift the motherboard up slightly. It might make it a wee little bit easier if I can feel at the back as well. And then we'll try and get the corners pushed into place. So where are the corners? That's the fan. That's one of the clips here. So that I can feel it poking through the back. So if I push down here, that's that one into place. And then I'll go to the other corner. Okay, that feels like that's in. And then we'll go for the bottom one. I can feel the clip poking through the back already, so a bit of pressure here, and that's it clipped in. And then we've got one more to go, and again I can feel the clips through at the back already, and a little bit of pressure. Okay, so we've got all 4 clips pushed into place, and our CPU cooler feels nice and smooth. So we spin that around. Cable management's pretty much not going to be great, I can guarantee that, because I'm not going to be able to see. Normally I would have the cooler twisted the right way round where the wire's going to be out of the way, but we're just going to be settled for a working PC hopefully at the end of this. So I think it's just with the side of the RAM we should have 2 fan headers. So we'll see, can I locate those? Yep, 1 and 2 over here, and the one closest to the RAM is going to be our CPU fan header. So that's this one here. So if we line the header up with a cable, yeah, that's clipped in. And I'm just feeling there definitely is another header to the right hand side, or my right hand side, I'm not sure which way it will be for you. So that's definitely the CPU fan header. And then the cable we just can tuck around and out of the way. Not my best job at managing this cable, but it's going to do for the purposes of this build. So I think next thing to do is get the motherboard into the case, but before we do that we're going to have to do a little bit of case preparation, so I'm just going to set everything to the side. So the next thing for us to do is get the case prepared, and fortunately very recently I have done a build in the Lancool 3, so if you haven't seen that, make sure you check it out. Now to get these tempered glass side panels off, there's a little latch on the front. If I pull that, the door should open, and I'm really not going to look forward to putting these on at the end, but taking them off is straightforward. Just lift them up, and then I'm going to set that over to the side. Okay, the other tempered glass door is exactly the same. We'll pull the lever, it should swing out, and then again, remember from my last build, this one was a little bit stiffer, but if we just wiggle it up and down, it should pop off. There we go, and we'll set that over to the side. Okay, so the tempered glass door removed, we've got 2 metal panels here over all of our cables. So these are also doors, so they're just going to pop out like this and pop out like this. Rather than actually remove these, because I think most of the cables are probably down at the bottom of the build, I'm going to leave these on and try and open and close them, because I think actually getting them on and off is going to be quite difficult. Down at the bottom of the case we can remove the mesh door. Our power supply is going to go down here. I'm going to make a little bit more room, or try and make a little bit more room, and see if I can remove our hard drive cages. Might be easier said than done. So feeling the hard drive cages, we've got 2 thumb screws down at the bottom. If I remove the thumb screw for the one at the end, and then I think it was just a matter of sliding it forward and lifting this one out. Yep, so that's that one removed. Second hard drive cage is also held on with a thumb screw. So if I can remove that, I've got a choice. I can push this forward and try and get the thumb screw back in, and that's option 1. The other option is I can fully remove it. So if I bring it all the way to this end, I think it's I can't remember if it's pushed forward or backwards. So one of these ways, and then I should be able to lift it up. There we go. So it's definitely going to be easier getting our power supply in without any hard drive cages at the bottom. Okay, so the next thing to do is get our motherboard into the case, but before we do that, we're going to have to do a little bit of preparation. So the standoffs at the back, we're going to need to move them because I've gone with a micro ATX motherboard. So fortunately, Lian Li does have a nice box that comes with this case with all the screws in it. So if we open the box up, and I did have a look at this before I started to see what was where. So these should be the screws we're going to use for our motherboard. That's our power supply screws. And I think in here I've got the standoff removal tool. Now these are additional standoffs. And this is our standoff removal tool. So we're going to have to add an additional standoff in. I could take one of the ones that's in the motherboard already out, but it's probably easier just to add one into this motherboard. So let's see, so standoff removal or insertion tool, standoffs in, find the screwdriver. There's our screwdriver, and then we just need to find where we're going to put it. So we fill at the back of the case. So there's our first row of standoffs, work down, that's the second row. And I think it should just be down below this middle standoff that we're going to have to add an extra one in. So I've got two hole locations down here. I think it's this one here. Okay, so that's our additional standoff into place. Hopefully it's the right place. There's another one down here, so time will tell if we've got it in the right place. And we'll put that into the box again. 1, 2, 3, and 4. The other thing we're going to have to do is get our I/O shield installed. Again, because I've gone with a cheaper motherboard. Again, I don't think a micro ATX motherboard is going to look great in this case, but I didn't want to destroy one of my end motherboards trying to build with it blindfolded. So let's see, there should be circular connectors down at the bottom. Yeah, so these feel like the circular connectors, I hope. Or these are them actually. I can hear my wife laughing in the background, so I'm either messing this up again badly. What I could actually do, yep, there is another way of doing this, is to actually get the motherboard. So where's the motherboard? There's the motherboard. There you go, I'm not going to mess this up again like the CPU killer. And this feels like the back end, so let's just try and line it up and see if it lines up one way or the other. So there you go, so it does seem to line up that way, and then if I try to put it on this way, it doesn't line up, so it must be this way round. If we go to the I/O shield cutout at the back, and then again, important to try and do this without cutting myself. Okay, so that's our I/O shield. It feels like it's gone into place, and then we should just be able to set the motherboard in and line it up with the I/O shield at the back. Should be a cable coming from our rear fan. Just want to check it's not getting caught. That's it there. And it looks like it's going through to the back already. Probably should be up above the motherboard, I think. It feels like we might be in place. No idea whether we are or not. Possibly, we'll try that. So if I open my screws again, then again it's the screws in the first box here that we're going to want to take out. I'll take a couple out and we'll get some more in a minute. Find my screwdriver. There we go. And we'll see if we've got things lined up when we start screwing in. So there's a hole here. So we're obviously not lined up because that is not going anywhere. Where are the standoffs? So I'm actually too high up, I think. So let's see, so we bring this down a bit. that's better now. And that feels like that's lined up with the standoffs at the back. Yeah, and that screw feels better. Feels like it's going in this time. So I'm just having a feel right down the bottom of the motherboard. I obviously haven't put the standoff in the right place. So two options. One, we can leave it without the bottom standoff, which doesn't seem like a great idea. So I'm going to have to take everything apart again and try again. Okay, so hopefully that should be our motherboard now free. We should be able to lift it up and slide it to the side. And then if I have a feel down for that bottom standoff that I put in. So this is the bottom standoff I've put in, but there was a little hole slightly further down, so we're obviously just in the wrong one. So I'm just going to move it one down. So we'll get the motherboard lined up again. Okay, so the moment of truth, have we moved the standoff to the right position down at the bottom? Let's see, can we find it? There's the hole. Oh, there we go, that feels like the screws going in. So that's us, all the screws in. Okay, next thing to do is get our cables plugged in. So if I open the doors at the back of the case, push the mesh panel down at the bottom, I'm going to then be able to feel all the cables that I'm going to need to plug in. So having a feel of what we have, I'm looking for our HD audio cable is the first thing that I want to plug in. And there's two potential cables which are our HD audio cable. The front panel connectors looks exactly the same as the HD audio cable. So I'm not sure which is going to be which, but we'll bring this cable through the bottom cutout. Let's see, so our HD audio header is at the far left hand side of the motherboard. We'll try this cable, it's either going to go or not go. Okay, so that has gone, so that must mean that is our HD audio cable. So I want to feel what we've got next. So this is the other cable that feels very much like the HD audio cable, so it must be our front panel connectors. Now our front panel connector header is at the bottom right hand side of the motherboard, and again it's either going to go one of two ways. We'll try and this way around here. Let's see, does it go? That does feel okay, so we'll leave that one there. So this is our rear fan header. And let's see, there is a couple of system fan headers down at the bottom of the motherboard, but it's not going to reach those. So we're going to have to bring it through the top, and there should be a fan header. I think it's just to the left of our M.2 SSD slot. There's normally one in most cases for a rear fan. Let's see, where's our M.2? CPU kit, our M.2, and that's a system fan header here. So we'll try and get it plugged into that one. Yep, that feels like it's plugged in. Now cable management again isn't going to be the best. We're just going to put as much of that through to the back as what we can. We should have another fan header at the back. Let's see, can I find it? That feels like it. And then down at the bottom of this motherboard, I remember from my last build, there is two fan headers. And that's maybe a fan header there. Try it and see. Yeah, there we go. So that's that system fan plugged in. Okay, so I'm not so sure this is going to be a good idea, but I am going to try and plug in the cable's addressable ARGB header. Most of the time I actually struggle to plug this in when I can actually see it. I think this is the header here, so we seem to have 1 pin, a gap and 2 pins. Yeah, that's the way around it seems to be. And then if I feel the cable, now plugging this cable in is optional. The case controller will work without it being plugged in. I think it feels like it's this way around. So I'm not going to try too hard at this. I don't want to wreck the header on the motherboard. Oh, hang on. That feels like it might have gone on. Okay, we'll go with that and see whether we have actually succeeded or not. Okay, so next I've got our USB Type-C cable. And it should go somewhere along the right hand side of the motherboard. And that feels like the header just here. So I bring it through the cutout. And I'm not sure, it's going to go one of two ways here. That's one, we'll try it. Hang on. Yeah, it was. That's it in. And then I think just above it is our USB 3.0 cable. So if I find it from around the back, yep, that's it here. Now the cable does have a notch on it, so there's a notch here, and there should be a notch on the motherboard, and it tells me what way this cable goes in. That's our 24-pin header. Okay, so the notch is to the right-hand side, so the cable's going to have to go in this way. Now this is quite dangerous, because there's a really good chance I'm going to wreck the pins on this header. I've done it before in a build, and I think this is the one header you're most likely to damage on any build. Alright. And it definitely has clipped in, so hopefully I haven't bent the pins. Like I say, this is the one I'm most worried about, that and the ARGB header, though the ARGB header seemed to go in okay in the end. Fingers crossed. Okay, the next thing for us to do is get our power supply installed. Although the case does have a removable bracket on the back of it, it doesn't make sense to take the bracket off, attach it to the power supply and then put it back in. There's just going to be more screws to do that way. So I'm going to try and slide the power supply directly into the back and get it fixed on. So I just need to work out where the fan is. This definitely feels like the fan, so we're going to want to install it facing down the way. So we'll slide this into the back of the case, making sure it doesn't catch any of the other cables that we've already installed. And then we slide it all the way to the back. Then I just need to find the screws. So these big screws feel like our power supply cables, and then we'll get it screwed in at the back. Okay, so we'll just line the power supply up at the back. And we'll find our screwdriver. Find the holes in the bracket. Okay, change of plan. We will go in with the bracket just onto the power supply. That doesn't seem like it's going to work. I'm just going to put this screw back in the box so I don't lose it. Where's my box? That's my box here. And then we'll take the bracket off. And then what I can do is slide the power supply out the back. Find my screws again. Get the bracket, we're going to go through here, and then just need to find the hole in this power supply. There's the hole there. Okay, so that's the power supply attached to the bracket. We should be able to slide the bracket into the back of the case, and then it should just be a matter of retightening up the thumb screws. There we go, so that's our power supply installed. Okay, next thing to do is get our cables installed. I've found what I think is our EPS cable at the back. It splits into two 4-pin cables, so it can't be anything else apart from an EPS cable. So that has clipped into place, and then it should just be beside it. Okay, so that feels like both our EPS cables are clipped in at the top. Next, our 24-pin cable. Okay, so we've got a little notch on the motherboard. I just find the header. So that's our motherboard there. And the little notch is over to the right-hand side. So again, this is a really annoying cable. It's actually split into two different pins. Again, it would be so much easier if it was one cable for what we're doing. And then we just need to get this plugged into the motherboard. Okay, so we'll maybe try and plug them in separately first of all. So we'll find the header, we'll plug that bit in first, and then we'll try the second part of the cable. There we go, so that feels like that is the cables plugged in. Okay, the next thing for us to do is get our graphics card installed. So I'm going to open the clip on the top PCIe slot. Once I locate it, oh there we go. And then I'm just going to line this up. Because we're using a micro ATX board in this case, I think it's the top two slots that we're going to need to remove. We'll try the top two slots and see how that goes. Okay, so that's the top two slots removed. If that's not right, I'll remove the one below. Okay, so our slot cover that's the top one, it's definitely open. And I just need to locate the graphics card. That's the graphics card round the right way. So we'll line things up with the slots. That's maybe feels about right. We'll try a little bit of pressure and see what happens. No, we're not right. So that feels like that's roughly in the right place. I'll try a little bit of pressure. Oh, hang on. Yep, that feels like it's clipped into place. Okay, let's try the thumb screws. Oh, there we go. I can feel that catching in the thread at the back. Right, so just a matter of tightening these two up with the screwdriver. There we go, so that is our GPU installed. Next thing to do is get it powered. So have a feel around the back for a PCIe cable. Let's see. That feels like one. It's a 6+2 pin connector. And then we've got a cutout here. So I'm going to bring that up and through. Right, so that's our cable through. Let's see, where's our connector? There's our connector. Probably easier to go with the 2-pin first at the end. Okay, so that's the 2-pin in, and then we'll try and get the 6 next to it. There we go, so that's our GPU powered. Okay, so the last thing for us to do at the back is some cable management, but importantly there's one cable I haven't plugged in, and that's the SATA cable, which is going to control the ARGB hub at the front of the case. I'm pointing in this direction, I'm not really sure which direction I'm pointing in. So we need to find our SATA cable, which it feels like this is the SATA cable. And somewhere at the front here, there should be a SATA power cable. We've got lots of ARGB headers. We should have a SATA cable in roughly the same direction. Hang on, there we go. So we'll try and get this plugged into the SATA cable coming from our power supply. Obviously not that way. I'm not so sure this is actually a SATA connector that I'm actually trying to, it feels like a Molex connector I'm trying to plug into. Probably SATA cable, yeah, there's a SATA there. And there's our SATA cable. Okay, let's try it now. There we go. So that's our SATA cable powered. So from a cable management point of view, I'm going to have to do this from memory, and it does really help that I've done a build in this case before. There is some cable straps at the back that we can use to manage our cables, and plenty of space at the bottom of the case for our power supply cables now that we've removed our hard drive cages. So I'm just going to try and do this by feel. So that's our EPS cable coming down. There's a Velcro strap here. That feels like our fan cable. It's not going to reach this strap, but that should be okay there. And then if we keep working down, we've got another Velcro strap here. Okay, and that's our EPS cable coming down to here. Now what have we got on this side? These cables are already managed. This must all be our case cables. And then we've got our EPS cables here. Nothing here. And there looks like there's a cable strap here. Okay, so let's see, can I get the metal cable covers back over? So that one seems to go on. What about this one? So something catching on it. Did I have to close them the other way around maybe? Let's try this one first and see if it makes a difference. There we go. So that's that on. So that's our metal cable covers on. So the rest of the cables probably can just go in at the bottom of the case. I'm just trying to be careful not to unplug any of them, particularly things like the RGB cable. It wouldn't take very much to dislodge it at the front. And then we'll try the metal mesh panel at the bottom. So it seems to be on, and I don't think there's anything loose there. So the next thing to do is get our glass panel. And I think I left it against this wall. Yep. So let's have a feel and see which way around this is. So there's the magnetic connector there. So it's going to have to go this way. I hope we've got these around the right way if we have. Now, I have had a little bit of practice of putting these on. And what you want to do is you want to get the bottom one on first and then line the top one up. This was the bit of the whole build I was dreading. Oh, there we go. Perfect. It's just the other side to do. Okay, so we've got the other panel, and I've filled the magnetic connector, that's it there. So we're round this way, and then if I just locate the case, okay, that's the case, and that feels like the bottom hinge. So we just need to get the bottom one on first of all. Yeah, that's it on. And then if we take a little bit of pressure and lift the top one on. There we go. Okay, so that should hopefully be the PC complete, but it's now time to take off the blindfold and pop the glasses back on and we'll take a closer look at the PC and see how good a job I've actually done. Okay, so taking a look inside the PC, the first thing I'm noticing is this RAM stick is actually in the wrong slot. It should be in the second slot along, so I'm not quite sure how I managed to do that. At one point I did open that first slot as well, but I thought I had closed it, but obviously didn't. Our CPU cooler looks to be installed okay, but the cable running from it is a bit untidy. And as I said, normally I would have the cable maybe starting here, so the cable runs up the back behind the cooler and you can't actually see it. Similarly, our fan cable looks a bit untidy here. Again, normally I would have that tucked up behind the fan and running to the back where you're not going to see it. Our power supply cable here look good, the case cables look good, and in fact everything along the bottom looks like it's installed in the correct places. The only downside is the cables look really untidy down at the bottom. I wouldn't recommend building with a micro ATX motherboard in this case. You want a full-sized ATX motherboard. The reason, like I said, I did it is I didn't want to use a high-end motherboard building a PC with a blindfold and end up wrecking the motherboard. Hopefully I haven't done that, but we'll see when we switch the PC on. Okay, so that's the build complete. Total build time was around about 2 hours and 45 minutes. Now we need to flip the power switch and see does the PC actually work. But before I do that, I think it's important to say that since I've taken the blindfold off, I haven't made any changes to the PC. So our RAM is still installed in the wrong slot, and I haven't checked any of the cables that I plugged in to see if I've done it correctly or not. So the PC is exactly as I built it with the blindfold on. Okay, here goes. So that's a good sign. We've got fans spinning, we've got lights on the PC. If we have a look inside, the RAM's lighting up, the graphics card is spinning. The one thing I'm noticing is our CPU fan isn't spinning at the moment, so we're going to have to wait and see what's caused it. So it's telling us to press F2 to run setup or F1 to continue. I'm going to press F1. And I've got a Windows drive loaded into the back of the PC, a Windows 11 bootable USB drive. The Windows icon has appeared, which is a good sign that it has found that drive, and hopefully we're now going to see the Windows installer screen appearing. So we'll just keep an eye on the monitor. Okay, so that's us through to the Windows installer screen. What I want to do now is have a closer look at the PC and see if we can see why our CPU fan isn't spinning. Okay, so taking a closer look at our CPU fan header, what you can notice is I haven't actually plugged the fan into the header correctly. There's one pin where it's not actually plugged in, so if I pull that out, move it along, and plug it into the correct pins, we've got our fan spinning. So I've had a good look around the rest of the PC, and the only other thing that I can find is the 8-pin EPS cable hasn't been plugged in correctly either. You can see there's a gap between the two 4-pin connectors, and you can actually see a row of pins in the middle. This one on the right is installed correctly, but the one over to the left is only actually installed in 2 of the pins and is sitting over to the side of the header. So I'm going to need to fix this as well as the RAM, so I'll power the PC off and get those 2 issues fixed. So that was so much more difficult than what I thought it was going to be. As somebody who's built so many PCs, I thought putting a really simple PC like this together was going to be really straightforward. But actually I was surprised it was simple things like installing the motherboard and getting it lined up and screwed in that was the most difficult. And what I thought was going to be real trouble, like plugging the cables in, wasn't that difficult, although it's fair to say I didn't do a perfect job with a couple of the cables. So it certainly was an experience doing this, and importantly I can say that no PC components were harmed in the making of this video, which was something at the start of the video I wasn't so confident with, as you can probably tell by the components I selected for this particular build. So if you have found this video useful, please give it a thumbs up, and if you're not subscribed to the channel, please hit the subscribe button as well. Thanks for watching.